You know what? It's March, which means the weather's getting warmer outside, the birds are starting to sing, but more importantly, it's time for block number 3 in our 2025 quilt along. Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video, I am going to show you the lovely fat quarters that were sent to me from Cotton Cuts. I'm going to unveil the block that we're going to make in this year-long quilt. And at the end of the video, after I give you the step-by-step instructions for how to put this block together, I'm going to showcase some of the blocks that y'all made in month number 2. So you're going to want to stick around for that. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about with this 2025 quilt along, it is a year-long block of the month that is completely free to sign up for. You can sew this from your stash or from new fabric that you want to purchase. Either way is up to you. The patterns are free, the video tutorials are free, and all of the details for what the program will look like is linked in the description box down below. So let's get right to this box of goodies to see what fat quarters we have to choose from. Here are the 12 fat quarters that were selected for me, and I've got them all opened up so that you can see the print. If there is a salvage, it is down here next to me so that you can read it. The first 2 fat quarters are from Ruby Star Society, and it is part of the Woodland Park by Rashida Coleman Hale. Then the next 4 fat quarters are all batiks, and these are supposed to be from the Bubbles, Curves, and Corners line by Deb Tucker for Island Batiks. And I gotta tell you, I love all 4 of these batik fabrics. Oh, so pretty. The next 2 fabrics that I have, actually only one of them has a partial salvage, but I can tell you from looking at the print and the color that this is some Lori Holt fabric. This is from the Peace and Plenty line by Lori Holt for Riley Blake Designs. These next 2 are classified as florals. They're from the Spirit to Create line by Free Spirit, and I got to show you this fat quarter fully opened up because I think this kind of reads as a mini panel. I'm a little sad that I lost half of these over here, but I still have 9 good size prints that I could cut out and do something with. This might make it into my block. The next fat quarter that's in here, I think is from that same line, but there's no printed salvage, but you could agree this looks very similar to that fat quarter. And then my last 2 fat quarters, I'm going to tell you they're not my favorite. This seems to be more holiday themed, and I'm not a really big fan of holiday prints. And it wasn't checked off on my card as getting these, but I see that it is holiday seasonal. This is Easter Wishes by Sila M Studio for Blank Quilting, and obviously this one goes with that as well. So I've got all these fat quarters. What block am I going to make? Well, this month's block is another easy one. It is the economy block, and it's bringing into play a flying geese unit, which we really haven't done before. So this block is actually comprised of a big square in the center, 4 flying geese units around the outside, and then 4 squares in the corner. I have designed this to play with 3 different fabrics, but you could do this with 2 if you wanted to. I wouldn't do it with just 1 because then what's the point of cutting up all the fabric? If you're going to just do 1 fabric, you might as well just cut out a 12.5-inch piece of that fabric, which is fine. You do you. If that's what you want to do for your quilt, it's totally acceptable. So now I've got to figure out, I know I want to do this with 3 fabrics because I showed 3 different fabrics on the pattern. So I've got to figure out which 3 I want to work with. I already know I want to go right back to this one. I want to incorporate this into my block. I don't know which one of these little panels I want yet. There's a few different colorways to choose from, and I think depending on which one I cut out and use, that's going to change the game for what fabric I bring into this. Okay, I think I figured it out. I'm going to use these two fat quarters and I'm going to cut out this square. I'm going to try to fussy cut it. And the reason why I went with this square is because it has a lot of color going on. I really like this green one. That's probably one of my favorites, but I think it's going to be hard to pick out fabrics just from this box to make that one work. This one has some pink going on that kind of plays off of this small pink print from Lori Holt. And then there's lots of green and even a bit of blue, which kind of will help this batik play off of this. So I'm going to rough cut this out. I'm going to starch my fabric. And then I'm going to print out and label all of my pieces according to what the pattern says. Don't forget, this is a free download and the link for it is in the description box down below. The first thing that I need to do is figure out what is going to be my A, B fabric, what is going to be my C, and what is going to be my D. I already know this is my fabric D, so I'm going to set that aside. I have a vision in my mind that this is going to be kind of the background of the block, so this is going to be my A, B, and this is going to be the flying geese body going around the square, so this is going to be my C fabric. So let's cut these out according to the pattern instructions. So I hit a little bit of a snafu. I'm making the 12.5-inch block, which means my fabric D needs to be cut at 6.5 inches squared. Unfortunately, the fabric that I had for the fabric D, I was going to be lucky to get 6 inches out of it, so I needed to recover. There's one of 3 ways that I could recover from this really easily. The first one is I could just recut the fabric, either from that fabric or something else, and make sure that when I cut it out, I have a 6.5-inch square. I don't want to do that because I feel like each of those little squares are about 6 inches and I don't want to cut into another one. The second thing that I could do is make a smaller size block. Well, I don't want to do that because so far I've made the 12.5-inch block for my quilt and I want to continue doing that. The third thing that I could do is just make the piece that I already cut fit the center square. And so what that looks like is this piece of fabric with a little border around all 4 sides. This fabric came from the same line, so I felt like it coordinated with it pretty well. And when I bring into play my background fabric and the bodies of my flying geese, I feel like it all still works together. I've seen some of you out there already doing this, but just let this be an encouraging moment to you. If you have a big piece of fabric in one of these blocks, it does not need to be just a cut of fabric. It could be a tiny block or something else that you pieced. Throw that in there and see how it looks. Now that we're recovered, let's get back to the pattern. The pattern wants us to start this block by making 4 flying geese units. Let me show you how I do them. There are about a gazillion different ways to make flying geese units, but I'm going to show you the way that I do it. This is what I call the stitch and flip method. And so we're going to make one at a time. I'm just going to show you how I make one, and then you can take this method to repeat it and make 4 of yours. Now, if you're an overachiever and you have a better way to do it, listen, as long as your flying geese unit measures up to what you have to square down to in that section of the pattern for the block that you're making, I don't care. Do whatever works for you. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my fabric C, which is my rectangle. This is going to be the body of my flying geese units. And I'm going to take 2 of my fabric B. These are squares that are going to go on either side of my flying geese unit. On both of these squares, on the wrong side of the fabric, I'm going to draw a line from one corner to the other corner. I am using an air-soluble ballpoint pen from Soline. This is my favorite marking tool for fabric. I will link to that down in the description box down below if you're interested in picking one up. Once I have my lines drawn, I'm going to take my fabric, B square, and line it up with the right short edge of my fabric C rectangle. And I want to make sure that the line that I drew from one corner to the other starts in the bottom right and goes up to the middle. Then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch just one thread to the right of that line that I drew to leave a little bit of room for this triangle to fold up and lay nice and flat. Here is a pro tip for you. Once you've taken that one line of stitching, if you want to take this back to your machine and about a 1/2 inch away from this stitch line, stitch a second line. Then when you cut off this piece, you'll have a bonus half square triangle unit that you can use in a different project. Once you have that square sewn on, you're going to come in and cut a 1/4 inch away from that diagonal line that you drew going from corner to corner. And because I took my second stitch, I have a half square triangle unit that's already ready to be squared up and put into another project. I will take a moment here just because it bothers me. You don't have to do this, but I'll trim up the seam allowance because I was a little generous when I skewed my fabric over. After we've cut our piece off, we're going to take this to our iron. We're going to very gently push this fabric up and over. And what we should find is that the fabric finishes flush right here along the right and the top edge. This triangle should complete your rectangle perfectly. We will want to give this a good press before we do the next step, which is to put the other side onto the other part of the rectangle. So we're going to pick up our square and we're going to line it up and we're going to make sure that that line that we drew starts in the bottom left and goes to the top middle and that our raw edges are all lined up nice and we have our fabric right sides together. Just like we did before, we're going to stitch on that line or right next to it. And then I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away from the line that I drew. And there again is another bonus half square triangle unit that I can use in a future project. And same thing with this side. We're going to press the seam up and over, and we should be looking to make sure that the rectangle keeps its size and shape. You're going to do that 4 times to make 4 of these units. Now here's the thing. If flying geese are a struggle for you, I do have some FPP template packs that will help you make one at a time stitch and flip flying geese units in a variety of sizes. It's $5 for the entire pack. It will be linked in the description box down below. It's over in my Etsy shop. Once you buy that PDF, you can just print off whatever size you need and just make a bunch of these. So for this one, you could just print off the 3.5 inch by 6.5 inch and just do your basic FPP to get an absolutely perfect flying geese unit, and you're all set. I've got 3 more to make, so I better get to work. Now that I have all 4 of my flying geese units, it's time to put the block together. Really, this was the most difficult part of this month's block. Let me show you how it all comes together. Following our layout, we want to take our fabric D and put it in the center. And then around all 4 of the outside pieces, we want to put our flying geese so that the points are pointing away from the block. This gives us kind of a square in a square type of look. And then the last step is to get your leftover fabric A's and put those in the 4 corners. And then all we have to do is sew this together. I am going to sew the top row, the middle row, and the bottom row. Now, when I do that, I'm going to press, and I'm always going to press away from my flying geese units. That means in the top row and the bottom row, I'm going to press out, and in the center row, I'm going to press in, and that's going to give me a chance to nest my seams up when I'm joining my rows together. Now, let's talk about how to nest a seam. I don't think I showed this very well in my last video, but essentially what it happens is you have the bulk of your seams going in different directions. You can see for the top row here, I have the seam where these two areas are going to join going this way, and the seam is going this way on this row. And so when I put them right sides together, making sure that my fabric is lined up the right way, my seams should be going in opposite directions, the bulk of them. And so what I should be able to do is lay the fabric on top of one another and just butt the seams up so that they're kissing. If I peel this back, then you should see that my seams are perfectly butted up against one another. At this point, you could put a clip or a couple of pins in here, or you could just hold on to it. If you roll this bulk between your thumb and your forefinger, you should be able to tell if the seams are stacked on top of each other. Maybe it feels a little too thick, or more importantly, you can feel if there's a gap in there, and so you know you're too far apart. For that reason, what I usually like to do is kind of give myself a little bit of a valley between the two seams because I can feel that valley. And then I just slowly move my seam over until it locks right up against that fabric. And then I'll go and sew this with 1/4 of an inch. When I come back after that seam is attached, I should have my points hitting almost perfectly. What I'm looking for is that this line is approximately lined up with this seam. This seam should approximately line up with this one so that if I were to turn this on point like this, you could see I'm starting to get a square. Square within a square within a square. You get the point. See what I did there? You get the point? I'll be here all week. Oh no, I sewed my row on wrong. I promise I did not do that on purpose, but this is another good learning opportunity. I have a seam ripper right here. I'm going to show you how I rip seams really quickly. So first, I like to fold it over so that I can see the seam that I'm going to rip. And then I get my seam ripper out and I stick the blade of the seam ripper down inside of here just to pop a couple of stitches. I'm only doing just a couple, just enough to be able to get the ball into my seam allowance. If you have really big stitches, then maybe you didn't need to do that part. You could have also done that part by picking them on this side. Once I have a few stitches plucked, then I'm going to take the ball point of my seam ripper and I'm going to put that down into the seam allowance, and the cradle, this little hook right inside of here, should be butting up against the thread that's holding your two fabrics together. I'm just going to give that a gentle nudge. Sometimes it will slide out, so you're just going to put it back in there. And if it ever feels like it doesn't want to cut, don't force it because you could be going through some fabric. Just always take a second to realign it and try again and see what happens. See, like right here, The seam ripper just went through the fabric. Now it is on this side of the seam, so I would be okay if I were to keep going, but this point is really, really sharp and it will go into your fabric. And so if you ever have any sort of resistance, whether you're doing it with the pointed side down or the pointed side up, always stop, because if it goes into the fabric, this little indentation here will give you some resistance. Stop, pull it out, put it back in, and try again. And that took me, what, like 30 seconds to rip? So much easier than sitting with that sharp point and going pluck, 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 right? Okay, let's put this on the right way this time. And now that everything is sewn and pressed, this is the block we have. I am going to point out, just because I don't want you to feel bad if your points aren't perfect. If you look really close, some of my points don't perfectly match up. This one is great. The other three, meh. But when I held it up like this and showed it to you, could you tell that those points were off? No, you couldn't. So don't be so hard on yourself. A lot of times it's really easy to think that content creators are doing everything absolutely perfectly. But what you're not seeing is the close-up imperfections. You're also not seeing anything that I choose not to show you. So maybe I put this whole block together wrong and this is my third take. I didn't, but you wouldn't know that because that footage would never have made it out to YouTube, maybe. Although I kind of like showing you guys my mistakes, so if I would have done it 5 different times, I probably would have told you. Thank you, friends, so much for doing this block with me. Let me know in the comments down below if you are sewing along and what your favorite fabric from those 12 fat quarters was. Also, don't forget, if you sew this block, you can take a picture of it, upload it to my Facebook group. Link is in the description box down below for your chance to be showcased in next month's block, which will drop on the second Saturday of April. All right, let's roll that beautiful block footage. Let's see what you guys made last month.